Hey guys, Sara Gonzales Unfiltered is back tonight. Yes, I've missed you guys, but we've got a special so spicy, so juicy that the YouTube overlords do not want you to hear all of the message. But we believe that the message is so important that we are going to give you the full episode for free over at blazetv.com/Sara. You do not need to be a subscriber in order to go watch the entirety of this episode. blazetv.com/Sara. You are not going to want to miss it. You want to talk about epic levels of big pharma corruption. You are going to be shocked. blazetv.com/Sara. Welcome to Sara Gonzales Unfiltered. Yes, I'm back, and I have the first episode in a series dismantling big pharma and the medical industrial complex. And, you know, those of my more loyal viewers, the ones who were here through the COVID years, have long known my skepticism toward the medical industrial complex and big pharma, one of the, I would say, most corrupt industries in the country, if not the most corrupt. In the year 2020 and the subsequent years that followed, we saw what happened to doctors when they went against the government narrative. You don't think Americans should get the jab? You're a quack. You believe in a treatment plan the government doesn't approve of? Your medical privileges are suspended. You don't think masks work? Based on all reputable studies, license revoked. You're a purveyor of disinformation. You're dangerous. In fact, in seemingly a humiliation ritual, some of these doctors were required to undergo a psychological evaluation in order to continue practicing medicine. Yes, because you'd have to be crazy in order to go against the government narrative, right? Well, as I said at the time, and I have been saying since then, if you think this kind of corruption and manipulation started during COVID, you'd be wrong. If you thought this was the first vaccine that has major safety and efficacy issues, you would also be wrong. If you thought that this was the first time a doctor has had their livelihood ruined for going against the government medical narrative, you'd be very wrong. Someone who knows this all too well is a man by the name of Dr. Andrew Wakefield. The name likely sounds familiar to you because you heard him smeared by the mainstream media as a disgraced, discredited doctor after he dared speak out about the MMR vaccine. But the truth is, I will tell you, far different than the media actually let on. You're surprised, right? You're surprised. The media didn't tell me the whole story? Well, Dr. Wakefield was a well-published surgeon from the UK with a specific interest in IBD and gastroenterology, with around 140 scientific publications on the matter within the span of a decade. The course of his career changed after he began hearing from parents complaining that their children began developing gastrointestinal problems after taking the MMR vaccine. Today, you're going to hear from Dr. Wakefield in his own words, not only what the media got wrong about him all those years ago, but about the new bombshell he has uncovered with respect to the MMR vaccine and big pharma corruption. I would like to welcome to the program Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Thank you for being here, sir.
Sarah, thank you very much for having me on.
It's the honor is all mine, doctor. So I want to, trust me, I want to get into the bombshell that you are about to uncover with your new movie. But I want to talk to you first about all of the myths that were perpetuated by the media about who you are and how you became Big Pharma's number one enemy, seemingly, so to speak. The repeated mantra since, 1998 is, Dr. Andrew Wakefield said that vaccines cause autism. But that isn't really what you said, is it?
No, Sarah, please call me Andy. On one level, I suppose you could look at this as how to take a relatively promising medical career and flush it down the toilet. And a lesson, therefore, to medical students and young doctors now. Or you could look at it as what happens when you confront government policy and you threaten pharmaceutical industry profiteering. And that's really where the story begins. Mm-hmm. I was very, very naive. I'd go back 30 years now that I've been involved in this. And as you say, I was a surgeon. I was a GI surgeon. I loved doing research. We published a great deal about Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. And then in 1995, I started getting calls from parents saying my child was perfectly well. They had speech and language interaction with their siblings. They were developing normally, healthy, and then they had an MMR vaccine. Then they had a seizure, and they were never the same again. The lights went out, and they were ultimately diagnosed with autism. I said, I'm terribly sorry. You must have got the wrong number. I know nothing about autism.
Yeah.
It was so rare when I was at medical school, we weren't even taught about it. 1 in 10,000, 2 in 10,000 children. And so they said, no, the reason I'm calling you is my child has intractable bowel problems, diarrhea, failure to thrive. I know they're in pain. They've lost the ability to speak, but as their mother, I know my child is in pain. But the doctors and nurses I talk to dismiss this. They say this is just autism. Get used to it, put them in a home, forget about them, move on, have another child. I mean, this is appalling. And yet the story that they told was so consistent and so coherent. These are very smart people. And they had no other reason. They weren't anti-vaccine. They'd follow the doctor's orders. They'd taken their child to get vaccinated. And so there was clearly something going on. And so I put together a big team of eminent doctors. The world's leading pediatric gastroenterologist at the time, Professor John Walker-Smith, and we investigated these children, and the parents were absolutely right, as is the case inevitably. Mm-hmm. The parents knew their children better than the doctors. The parents were right. The children had an inflammatory bowel disease. And when we treated that bowel disease, as we might treat Crohn's disease or colitis with anti-inflammatories, then not only did the bowel symptoms get better, but they started speaking again. It's rather like that Lorenzo's oil story, that they started using words, language that they had stopped using 5 years ago. It was fascinating. This was and we thought that didn't happen.
Right.
So we did it again. We did it 183 times before I left the Royal-Free Hospital, and it happened virtually every single time. So when the parents were right about that, the medical profession was wrong on virtually every count. There's no regression. The diet doesn't work. This isn't autism. We know about it, my dear boy. You don't, sort of thing. There's all this medical nonsense that would go on, and yet there it was in front of our eyes. We could see what was happening to these children, time and time again. When they said my child regressed in the face of a vaccine, we had to take that extremely seriously. Mm-hmm. Not to buy into it, to believe it or not believe it, but to investigate it to the best of our ability. The parents had entrusted their children to our care, and that was our duty. Yeah. That's not how medicine works.
Yeah, so you were following the facts where they lead. And of course, this is, I'm just trying to summarize what I believe that you said. So tell me if I'm wrong. But I recall you saying, we need to look more into this. We've seen all of these, look at all of these children who are coming in with the exact same symptoms, the exact same stories from the parents. As you point out, the parents know better than the doctors. We're listening to all of these. We're seeing it with our very own eyes. We're documenting it. We should probably take the single vaccines, the measles vaccine, the mumps vaccine, the rubella vaccine separately for now until we can study this more. And I want to play, actually, a video from you saying just that, which it later became completely misinterpreted. But here is Andy on the MMR vaccine being split up.
I do think that there is a case for dissociating these vaccines into their component parts, separate measles, mumps and rubella vaccines, given perhaps by separation of 1 year.
Now, if you were an anti-vaxxer at that time, you would be doing a really terrible job of being an anti-vaxxer because you didn't tell people not to get a vaccine. In fact, you told them to get 3 different ones instead of 1.
I was terrible. In propaganda, I would be absolutely useless. What we did is we wrote up a case series, the first 12 children, and people say, well, that doesn't mean anything. When this is how human disease syndromes are first described. Listen. Mm-hmm. You listen to the patient or the parent in this case, then you look at your investigation findings, and then you write them up. And you say, you can draw no conclusions. You can't make definitive statements. All you can do is say this is a case series, and based upon this, we recommend following more detailed study.
Andy, when we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about the kind of the current state of medicine where we're at. And then I want to get into the bombshells of the latest movie that you have coming out. Boy, Big Pharma must really not like you. First, we want to thank our sponsor before we go to break, PreBorn. So as we sit here today, the lives of babies still in the womb actually are hanging in the balance. So if you guys have not heard about the amazing ministry of PreBorn, I want to tell you about it. So what PreBorn does, they make it very easy to partner with, okay? Because their ministry empowers young expectant mothers in crisis to choose life. So these women, they're scared. They're often told, you can't do this by yourself. You don't have the money. They're scared. And they're told by the left, it's just a clump of cells. Don't worry. You will have no regrets afterwards. Don't worry about it. Just go get an abortion. But when they walk into a PreBorn clinic, what PreBorn does is they show them the truth. They show these women ultrasound. They show them the baby inside of them, and they let them hear the heartbeat. And when a woman considering abortion visits a PreBorn center and hears her baby's heartbeat, it makes her almost double likely to actually choose life. So it's $28 to sponsor an ultrasound. The cost of one ultrasound is $28. How many babies' lives can you save? Okay. You can donate securely over at preborn.com/Sarah. We're working to save the babies, guys. All right. So any donation helps. $28 could be the difference between life and death of a baby. It's preborn.com/Sarah. So, Andy, knowing what happened to you and how you were kind of, if there's ever anything to be an OG for, it's probably not fun to be the OG for like having your medical license stripped from you. But you are the OG of it, unfortunately. And when you're watching these doctors during COVID, you're watching doctors like Peter McCullough and Ryan Cole and some of these other doctors who are actually speaking out against what they believe to be wrong, right? You're watching this, and are you just like, wait, if you guys even knew the half of it?
I'm very, very proud of them for standing up.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Back in the day, literally 30, 25 years ago, there was, and I say this not as a sort of feel sorry for Andy Wakefield,
right.
It's just a story that sort of characterizes the history of this, is that this was all very new. Cancel culture, the industry did not have a plan for how to deal with dissent from the inside. Mm-hmm. And so when this happened, it was one person, and then there was the British government, the Department of Health, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American government, the pharmaceutical companies globally, the World Health Organization, UNICEF. It was an interesting disparity in there, and so didn't really stand a chance in that battle. But you keep going. You can either roll over and quit, or you can say, no, I don't have a problem.
Right.
That kid has a problem.
Right.
He has no voice, so somebody's got to do this. And I don't mean to sound heroic or sanctimonious, and that's what I signed up to do. And so, but I'm very, very proud now to see that people like Peter McCullough, the most published cardiologist in the world, the best cardiologist in the world, is not immune to the attack from the pharmaceutical industry, the government coming down on his university. How powerful are they to be able to do that? Who just destroyed now hundreds of careers. But the great thing is that there are strength in numbers. These people are coming together and they're refusing to be defeated. They're going to not only survive this, they're going to thrive in this environment. And they're now, in a very short space of time, being shown to be absolutely right in everything they've said.
Yeah.
So I've seen a huge change in the whole sort of landscape of this issue, from being unrespectable to being avant-garde, to being, this is what we believe and we're going to stand by it come hell or high water. And I love that. And I'm very, very pleased to say that I know these people and that they are my friends.
You say, how powerful must these industries, I guess, be to be able to ruin someone's life? And I agree with you. How did they get to be so powerful?
What happened, the key event let's talk about vaccine manufacturers in particular, because they have a very, very interesting example, is that up until 1986, they were not indemnified for damage done by their vaccines. And, I remember going on CBS with Sara Gonzales when she was still there. And we did a segment on this, and she said, Andy, when this goes for editing, within 15 minutes, we will hear from the money men on the top floor saying, can't play the segment, it's pulled because of our sponsors. She was wrong. It was 5 minutes. 5 minutes it took for them to say, pull the segment. It's not going to play. That's what's happened to the news media. That's what's happened to the medical training, medical students. It's what's happened to medicine in general. That's tragic. It's absolutely tragic.
Actually, we want to thank our sponsor, funny, Jase Medical. So Jase Medical is there for those of you who, we've got drug and medical shortages all across the board in the United States. And if you guys thought, what happened with COVID, it turns out most of your medicine that you get is made in China, which, by the way, is not a good idea, okay? But be that as it may, when things shut down in China, you don't get your medication, as it turns out. And I'm not a big fan of medication, but if you've got something like you've got a kid that has strep throat, or you've got someone in your family who just takes a daily medication that they would greatly suffer if they didn't have it, that's what Jase Medical is for. So they've got a Jase case, okay, and you can personalize it, but it's like they've got 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. And all you have to do to get your Jase case is fill out a simple form online. You're going to have it there ready in case you need it. They've got dozens of add-on options as well. They've even got ivermectin as an add-on, so you can customize it for your family's needs. By the way, if you've got grown children who have families of their own, get them a gift card as well so they can personalize theirs. You can go to jasemedical.com. Use promo code Sarah for a discount. That is jasemedical.com, promo code Sarah.
He was an orphan of conflict in Africa. He was smart and bright, and then we got him home and he crashed right in front of us.
Some very important people are saying our vaccine does not work.
You're gonna want to read this. They faked the data. They cheated on every level.
You said you're a lawyer,
Family law.
and you want to understand why.
Let me see it. What about Ishal?
Your son and every other son and daughter depends on whether or not you choose to live by their rules.
Incineration. Immediately.
What have they got? Like nothing is what they got.
Were you aware of the lab's failure to demonstrate efficacy of the mumps vaccine, a level required by the FDA?
No, to respond to the FDA's concern.
And leave a dangerous vaccine on the market.
Dangerous?
Objection.
Strongly recommended booster shots.
Of course you did.
This is a confidential document.
These were shredded.
It's a protocol.
They've got the sheets. They've got the evidence I was told they didn't have.
No one will ever believe them again.
That was the trailer for Protocol 7, a new film coming soon by Andy Wakefield. And you may have seen a familiar face in that trailer. We have joining us Matthew Marsden, of course, Blaze TV contributor, and I always call you actor and producer extraordinaire. Well, there you were.
It's my day job, right?
Yeah. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, no, it's my absolute pleasure.
Matt. So I want to talk to you guys about Protocol 7. I realize it's the name of the film, okay. Mm-hmm. But what is Protocol 7?
Protocol 7 is a protocol used by Merck to attempt to enhance the sensitivity of their mumps assay.
Let's talk about some of the super science-y things that Merck did in all of their, super science-y procedures that they did in order to give them the outcome that they wanted with regard to the MMR vaccine. We'll do that after the break. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So those of you who are living in constant pain, there's millions of you out there. I know, millions of Americans. You live in constant pain. You think that that's the way it is. You're just constantly going through life like, well, I'm a little less patient with my kids and my spouse because I just have that nagging pain all the time. That doesn't have to be your life. Try Relief Factor. It was developed by good doctors. not the bad ones, okay? But it is all natural, so it's not going to make you feel loopy or jittery or anything like that. It's just a very, very strong anti-inflammatory because it turns out you get rid of the inflammation in your body. Oftentimes, that is the root cause of your pain. And so Relief Factor has this 3-week quick start pack. Okay, they've got a guarantee with it. It's $19.95. 70% of the people who order that 3-week quick start go on to keep ordering more. That's how many people it's working for. So the odds are in your favor that you can get out of pain. And if you can, it can be life-changing. They've got a guarantee, like I said, so you're out nothing. Okay, you're out nothing except potentially your pain. You can go to relieffactor.com, get that 3-week quick start over at relieffactor.com. So in Protocol 7, the movie, I'm going to ask both of you because you, Andy, are a doctor, you play one. Okay. So you both get to have an opinion on this. Okay. Within this case, this whistleblower story, this case that is coming out against Merck, I mentioned super science-y. Okay, does this sound super science-y to you? Selectively changing raw data to get rid of test results that did not give Merck the outcome that they needed. Altering or destroying raw data on counting sheets and using, an Excel spreadsheet that automatically identifies unfavorable counts to them so that they could expedite their cheating. Does that sound very scientific to you?
Well, of course, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The whole thing was corrupted from the very outset. And what's interesting about this case is that it's been going on for a very long time. The screenplay was written in 2012 with the help of my friend Terry Rossio, who direct Pirates of the Caribbean, Kong versus, Godzilla versus whatever.
Yeah.
This goes on and on, Aladdin. We had a wonderful time writing it, and then we sat on it because we're waiting for the court case to play out. Now, the story was written on a limited number of documents that were available to us at the time. Mm-hmm. Now there are millions of documents that are being unsealed, and we've got to read those. We've got to make sure that this doesn't pull the rug from under our story. What's fascinating about that is that when we do that, we find that the actual fraud, the actual misdemeanors that they committed, far, far greater than we characterized in the film. It's much worse. In other words, are Merck going to come after us for making this movie? I doubt it, because they've been trying to keep all of these documents under seal for a very long time. Now it turns out that what they actually did seems to be a great deal worse than we've characterized in the story. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how that plays out. But they did. The fraud took place on many, many levels, because when they did one thing and it failed, they had to move on to another thing that failed. And then in the end, as you point out, they just simply had to cross out numbers and change them. And that's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. I mean, if I'd done it, I would have had my license withdrawn many years before. I would have been called a fraud by Fox News many years before. And yet they seem to be able to get away with it. They've all moved on to other jobs, and there's got to be accountability, and that's why this film is so important. There is no accountability. It's business as usual, and that cannot be allowed to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you have these doctors who have just kind of taken over the medical industrial complex, as I like to call it, and whatever they determine to be science is now science. And if they can't get to that particular outcome by way of actual science, they'll just figure it out. And then once they do, they'll say, this is the science, and that's it. I mean, it's just been hijacked by a bunch of people who already have their pre-existing notion of this is the outcome that I want to get to. How will I get there, even if I have to lie, cheat, and steal? What did Merck do when, and again, this is documented, okay? What did Merck do when they couldn't get the result that they needed with the PRN assay?
I'm going to spoil the movie now.
Well, you don't have to all the way if you don't want to, but did they toy with it a little bit?
They did.
Added a little bit of things in there.
They added the secret sauce.
Yeah.
And the problem with the secret sauce is that they wanted to improve the sensitivity of the assay, its ability to detect a positive result, the result they wanted.
Right.
What they in fact did was to mess with the specificity of the assay, giving them a completely meaningless, nonsensical result. So the secret sauce will remain until the movie breaks, but yeah, this was one of the many levels that they operated on. The other thing about the movie, I just want to say, Sarah, because to me as a director, and this was the most fun part, is that the other main element of the movie was about power of a mother's intuition. So here we have this sort of small town lawyer, Alexis Kaprowski, this woman who's in family law, and she adopts a child who catastrophically regresses into autism. And from that point forward, everything is conflict. Drama should be about conflict, and everything in this woman's life is about conflict. Conflict with her husband, conflict with the child's doctor, conflict even with Matthew as the doctor who brings the whistleblower forward, conflict with the courts, conflict with everybody. Yeah. And she has to rise above all that. She has to trust in her innate instinct as a mother to do what is best for her child, and by proxy, every child in the world. Yeah. And that is one of the guiding lights in my medical career has been to listen to mothers, because invariably because they know their child so well, innately, for reasons that we can't even put into words. Right. These two were once connected. They were once one, and they will never be separated. Yeah. They just know when their child's well or when they're ill, what's troubling them. And so she prevails. And that for me is, she prevails against the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes. Yes. All right. Hold that thought. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. Protocol7.movie. Make sure that you sign up so that you can be updated whenever the movie releases, and you're not going to want to miss it. It is explosive. It's going to make your blood boil, but it is information that you need to know. Dr. Andrew Wakefield, thank you so much for being here.
Sarah, thank you so much.